Okay, I'm going to be continuing my list tutorial, video tutorial, and I just want to remind you this all comes from css.maxdesign.com.au. I also want to point out that they have a bunch of tutorials. We're going to do one for every tutorial on the list tutorial page. We're on number 2, which is the rollover list. Examples of the rollover list, if you were to go to CSS Max Design and go to List-O-Matic, you could see a bunch. Now, I'm going to start at this point and just kind of walk you through. And of course, we did CSS background images for bullets in my previous tutorial. But if you look here, we can see certain lists, and they're starting to look a little bit more like a navigation bar, less like a list of links, right? So I'm going to walk you through some of these, and these are old, right? So a lot of these go way back. And all I want to show you is that these techniques that worked back then are still the same techniques that are going on today. And it's really not that complex as to what's going on. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one because we have background images being used. So there are some good different variations. Now I'm going to go back to the list tutorial, and we're going to start on rollover list. And I'm just going to walk through this tutorial, but I'm going to move this tutorial out of the way now and focus on the project. Okay, so let's look at the project I've been doing. I decided, and this is for my students, is that we're putting everything in our student folder in a CSS folder. So if you're to look in your folder, at this point, students, you should have a CSS folder, an HTML folder, an image gallery folder, a travel brochure. And in your CSS folder, you should have a series of different web pages. The background image project is in there. And the background bullets, that's the first one of the list tutorial. The second one we're going to do is just the simple rollover. So at this point, if I double click rollover, we will see it's just basically an unordered list of links. Now let's look at my HTML to see what's going on here. So I'm going to use Notepad++, bring this down here so you can see. Okay. Now, each of my pages in the list tutorial look pretty much the same. We have a header 1 with our title. Header 2 is our subtitles. In this case, it's the vertical rollover navbar. We have our unordered list. Each list item has a link. These are live links. They work. However, in the tutorial, they use a dummy link. If you were to go to the website, you would see something like this. Ahref equals, and you'd see the pound sign. So if you're just wanting to test this out, you could do something just like this. Put a pound sign. You need the pound sign there because if you don't put anything in the href, it won't act as a link and your CSS won't work. Okay, so that's one way to do it. And I'm going to get rid of that because in this case, these are live links. They really are working. And we're focusing on the second one, which is the rollover navbar. You will notice that there are no CSS styles in the style tag yet. So all of our focus today is going to be on the navigation. Okay, I'm setting this up now so that we can see our code here. And we're going to focus on our CSS. And in just a moment, we're going to do a split screen where the right-hand side is just going to be the CSS code. The left-hand side will be the page. As you notice on here, we have a lot of room, so we're just going to move that over now anyway. Okay. All right, the first thing we're going to do on our CSS is for it to look more like a navigation bar. I do not see bullets in my navigation bar, so we're going to remove bullets. And so on here, one of the things we should do, and this is going to be important, guys, is we need a way to target our unordered list because we may have a web page that has both a navigation bar and an unordered list. If we remove the bullets from any unordered list, we're going to be in trouble because it's going to look really weird if it's supposed to be a bulleted list and yet there's no bullets. So we're going to put a space here and we're going to give it a class. Now, what we give it as the class is up to us. Now, in the tutorial that's on CSS Max Design, they are using what's called the ID attribute. And that is not overall recommended. If you have the option to do a class or an ID, it's typically preferred to do it as a class. So we're going to do it that way. And we're going to call this nav container. So we give a UL with the class of nav container, and now we're going to target that unordered list. So we're going to put dot nav container. Remember, the dot before the nav, there cannot be a space between it. And the dot represents that it is a class that we're targeting. I'm going to tab over all my selectors, and we're going to do, by the way, this is targeting the UL. And what we can do is our list style type, we're going to set to none. And that's going to remove the bullets. So I hit refresh over here. You'll notice there's no more bullets on the left. Okay? So that's the first thing you want to do. Get rid of those bullets. The next thing, they usually recommend you remove margin and padding and add it back as needed. So we're going to do that now. Margin 0, padding 0. Save our changes, and now everything's on the far left. We're going to be adding back some of this stuff in just a moment. Okay, the next thing, and this is optional, it is not required, but if you want to get a nice consistent rollover effect, the next thing you should do is display your hyperlinks as if they were a block level item. What does that mean? Well, your hyperlinks are inline tags, right? And as inline tags, they're only as wide as they need to be. Okay? So this anchor for background bullets has more content and is therefore wider than the nested navbar link. And so if it's displayed as inline, it's only as wide as it needs to be. We're going to reverse that now. So we're actually going to display it as a block. So now we're going to treat it as if this were a paragraph or a div or a header, what have you. I'm going to save the changes, or I'm going to save the changes on here, and you're not going to see a difference at this point. However, what is going to be significant is when I roll over my hyperlink, I don't have to be right over the text. Do you see how my cursor now is a hand? Okay, notice it's like a hand when I'm over a hyperlink. Well, I'm not over the hyperlink here. Well, technically I am. It's because this is displayed as a block, and my hover works anywhere. Believe me, this is going to be a handy thing to have. Next, we're going to add a background color so you can see how this works. And if we add a background color, we should add a color as well. So we're going to add a color, we're going to add a background color. Now, I need to go find one, so I'm going to go find a nice color scheme. Now to get my color scheme, I decided to go to the color wizard and hit randomize a few times. And I really like what came up here. One of the things for a navigation bar is you should play off of background color and foreground color and make them extreme opposites. So one is really light, one is really dark. So I'm going to use this as my background color, and the other color code, this light shade, as my foreground color. So put in the pound sign, paste in the color code, go back here, copy my color code from here, and paste it in for my color. Control V would have done the trick. Now let's take a look at our page and see what it looks like now. So, is that the best color combination? Maybe not, but it works for now. You guys could pick better colors than I can, I'm sure. I'll let you do that. That's your job. My job is just to show you how to do this. I'll leave the style for you. The next thing on your navbar, if you're going to do a vertical navbar going from top to bottom, you should set the width of everything. So we're going to set the width on our hyperlinks. And by the way, you can set it on the hyperlinks or you can set it on the list items. And at this point, because it's vertical, you're going to set the width anyways. You might as well do it on the hyperlinks. So we're going to set the width here, and we're going to do it as, if you count the number of letters on here, that can give you a hint as to how many EMs. So let's see what happens if it's 10 EMs. And there we go. you can play around with the width here. You're just trying to find a width that seems to go well with everything that you have. Okay. At this point now, we've set our nav bar. It's looking ugly, but it's starting to look kind of like one. What we want to do next is add a little bit of padding. So we want to make sure that when our links sort of are spaced out a little bit better. And we're going to use the padding shortcut. And in the padding shortcut, the top and bottom padding should be there, but it should not be nothing like the left and right. So we're going to give a top and right of a 0.1 EM and a left and right of a 0.3 EM. And let's just see what that looks like. All right, you might want to adjust it more. I do. So you play around with this until you kind of got what you like. Each time I do this, I do a little bit more. There you go. That looks a little bit more like it. We might want more later, so that's up to you. I'll let you decide how you want to do it. You've seen me adjust it. Let's get rid of our underlines. We don't really need those anymore because they're going to start looking like buttons in just a moment. So we're going to get rid of our underline, and that goes to the hyperlink, right? Because the hyperlinks are underlined. And it's text decoration. We're going to set the text decoration to none, and that will remove the underline. And at this point now, you see there's no underlines. Okay? We're getting there. We're almost there. But what we want is a rollover technique. So in order to get the rollover, we need to use the pseudo selector. Nav container a:hover. You'll notice it's almost the same as this one. We just add a colon and the word hover. Note also there's no space between the A and the colon and between the colon and the H and the hover. Now we've got different ways we can do this. What if we reverse these two colors? Watch what I do. I'm just going to copy those. I'm going to paste them in. And then I'm going to take this background dash and move it up. Or I could move the color codes back and forth. I find that's my favorite technique. Whoop, wrong file. There we go. That's not it either. Hold on a second. Okay, I got my page back. All right, so I saved my changes. I want to hit refresh. And now watch what happens when I roll over. You can see how that works. So that's the essence of a rollover bar. Is we do the list style type none. We display our hyperlink as a block. We add our color, background color, adjust the width, the padding. We remove the underline. And then we play around on the hover. And there are some other options. You could add borders. You could also make it so that when you're on a current page, it displays as current. I'll show that on a separate video tutorial.